to session 4 of the Referral Mastery course. I'm glad you're on this journey together with me. Hope that you're keeping up with the steps toward mastery or the homework. But I am not so naive as to think that over the last 2 weeks you have finished priming all of your advocates. Again, we've done this with many people, and I know that this is not only is it from a time planning perspective difficult to get all those phone calls into 2 weeks, but from an emotional perspective, it's difficult getting on the phone that often every single day using a script or a dialogue. And so what I like to do when I teach this course, though these sessions are designed to be watched every 2 weeks, we give you a 2-week block to go and complete the steps towards mastery from the previous session. At this particular point in the unfolding story, I like to just give you a little bit of grace and give you a little bit of extra time. So what we're going to do today, though we have been looking at the database aspect of the referral system, which is the apple tree on our apple tree diagram, the tree itself, what we're now going to do is shift our attention in this session to the bottom right-hand corner of the apple tree diagram, which is that fragile container, which we're saying is going to correspond to service excellence. Again, very much indebted to Brian Buffini for this. I learned many of these things in the time that I was working together with Brian, but I think they've got huge value, so I'm going to share them with you today. The first point I want to make to you is that there is a huge difference between making a sale and creating an advocate. You know, any agent, if they stick at it long enough, are going to make a sale. You know, they're going to generate leads somehow, and they're going to find a buyer or a seller, and they're going to make it happen. But it's a far cry from that to what we're trying to see you do in your career, where you are consistently generating referred leads because so many people support your business, and when you do service a client, that client themselves become a client for life thereafter. You not only close a deal with them, but you turn them into an advocate because of the relationship you build with them during the course of the transaction itself. Now that's an important point. If you want to do that, turn all of your past clients into ongoing sources of referrals, you have to provide exceptional service to the clients that you work with. Surely that makes sense to you. So wouldn't it be great if there was a few clever little techniques which we could use that do leave this lasting lifetime impression on people so that they will always feel warm towards you and be happy to refer you? Well, that's what we're going to do today. So in addition to, yes, be honest, yes, do your job well, yes, be on time, there are 6 little techniques, little keys that I think you can use to kind of unlock the door to what we're talking about. So I'm going to give you the 6 in advance now. You can fill in the missing words if you are using the workbook. Number 1, communicate understanding of your client's emotions. I am probably going to spend the majority of my time in this video speaking about that one because it is so powerful and it is so important to do this if you want to win the hearts of people. Then number 2, be flexible. Show your client that you're willing to try. Number 3, wow your clients with little touches of service throughout the transaction. Number 4, give your client your undivided attention. Number 5, keep the experience pleasant at all times. And number 6, maintain constant communication throughout the transaction. Maintain constant communication throughout the transaction. All right, super. Let's turn our attention to number 1, which is to communicate understanding of your client's emotions during the course of the transaction. Bad salespeople, let's talk about bad salespeople for a second, because you've all dealt with one. Well, bad salespeople try to convince others to make decisions that they do not want to make. Just think about that for a second, where you've been into a store and somebody's got their product or their clothing range or whatever it is that they're trying to sell you, or you walk onto a car dealership. I recently walked into a motorbike dealership because I was interested in some of the bikes there, and the young guy who was the salesman came up and just started telling me about one bike, and I actually said to him, look, I've just ordered another type of bike, but I'm just interested, I've seen this one on the net. And he started basically telling me how brilliant this bike is and how wonderful it is, and it's better than the one I bought. And it's like, he's just, I don't even know if he thought I was going to somehow buy this other bike, why he was doing that. It made no sense to me. But bad salespeople are like that. They've got a product and they are going to sell that product to you, and they're going to convince you. And this is the major thing I want you to get out of your mind, that sales is not about convincing people of anything. Yes, we do share information which we hope will impact them, that we hope will enlighten them. And sometimes part of sales is inspiring people, but it's not about, I am going to convince you to do something that I want you to do, that I want you to do. That is the quintessential character mark trait of bad salespeople. On the other hand, good salespeople help people make decisions that they do want or need to make. Now, I don't want to steal my thunder for later, but how is it that you can genuinely know what people want or need? And guys, there's only one answer to that question. You have to ask questions and listen. And this is the next point in the workbook. Bad salespeople never listen. They just don't listen. They think that the more information they give, the more likely they are to make a sale. I remember when my wife Danielle and I had small kids. We had 3 kids in 3.5 years, and so things changed pretty fast around our house, including what car we needed. And we had a Toyota Conquest, it was called at the time, and it just wasn't going to cut it anymore. So we headed on down to the local dealership. It was a Renault dealership where Danielle had organized a test drive. And that's where we first met Bernie, the Renault salesman. And as we stepped onto the showroom floor, we were met enthusiastically by Bernie, who gave me a very firm handshake. Bernie was obviously quite anxious to avoid any small talk with us because he believed the vehicle would do the talking for itself, and aided by his commentary, of course, he then ushered us to the car in no time at all. And from the time that I met Bernie on the showroom floor, through our time on the test drive, through our time back at the showroom where we listened to Bernie some more, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that I didn't speak one word. Bernie just talked and talked and talked and talked, and when he was finished talking, just to be sure, he talked some more. Well, bless Bernie's heart. He had obviously recently completed the Renault Scenic Info course and was keen to deliver, by way of regurgitation, every possible fact that he could remember about that car. And oh boy, he really gave that job everything he had. Now, if you've ever done any kind of sales training, you will have heard this advice. Don't sell features, sell benefits. In other words, don't say to a buyer, this house has high ceilings. Rather, you would say, this house has high ceilings, which means it will stay cool in the summertime. The way you get from features to benefits is by using the words which means. Now, the only problem with that advice is that it doesn't work. Now, why do I say that it doesn't work? Because that is not the best way to make a sale, and it is certainly not the best way to create an advocate. The only features or benefits which a salesperson should be telling the client about are those which the client is interested in. And how are you supposed to find out what the client is interested in? Obviously, you've got to ask them questions. You've got to listen to them. And this was Bernie's great error. You know, memory is a funny thing. This is now over 20 years ago. When I cast my mind back to that memorable day those many years ago, I can still see Bernie's mouth moving. But all I hear in my memory is blah, 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 blah. But then there's this sudden break in the clouds of memory, and I hear Bernie say this. And Mr. Johnston, something else about this car is that it has titanium in the windscreen. You Americans call a windscreen a windshield. He said there's titanium in the windshield, which means you don't get sunburnt while you're driving. And then, And then my memory goes straight back to, and Mr. Johnson, blah, 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 blah. For some reason, my brain retained that one sentence that Bernie said, but not for the reasons that Bernie would have liked. I think I recall that because at the time I remember sitting there thinking to myself, Bernie, that is the most unbelievably arbitrary piece of information that any human being has ever given me. I remember thinking, Bernie, I have absolutely no interest whatsoever in not having my arms burnt through the windshield. In fact, Bernie, most of the time, I drive with my arm hanging out the window. Bernie, why on earth are you telling me that? But you see, in Bernie's defense, he was only doing what the sales training manual had told him to do. He wasn't selling features. He was selling benefits. He even used those magic words, which means. He'd been listing feature followed by benefits for 20 minutes by the time he came to feature. There's titanium on the screen. Benefit, which means you won't get burnt through the windscreen. Well, you know, congratulations, Bernie. Well done, Bernie. The only problem, of course, was that Bernie was trying to get me to buy something that I didn't want. It smacked of insincerity. He didn't care what we wanted, what was important to us. He was only interested in selling us what he had so that he could make a buck. Good salespeople, on the other hand, as we've said, listen. The first thing that good salespeople do is ask questions, and then they listen actively. That means that they're listening for certain cues. And I'd like to suggest to you that the most important thing for you to listen for is emotional wants and needs. That's what top salespeople do. They listen carefully enough to know what is truly important to the prospect, what touches their emotions, and then they meet those desires with logical solutions. Now, if Bernie had just taken the trouble to ask me one very simple question, Mr. Johnston, what is important to you about purchasing a new car? He would very quickly have found out that the reason I was at Renault was that their cars at that time had a great reputation for safety, and that this particular vehicle, the Renault Scenic, had a large boot space. It had the right amount of space for a growing family. Those two things, safety and space. And what Bernie should have then done was tell me predominantly about the features and benefits that related to those two topics. What also would have helped Bernie is if he had dug down a little bit into those things. If when I'd said, I'm looking for a car that's safe, if he had said to me, Mr. Johnston, why is that important to you? I would have said to him, well, you know, we've just had 3 kids in 3 years. My wife is now running back and forth to preschools and play dates and all sorts of things. And these are the foremost precious people in the whole world to me, and I want to make sure that they're safe. And Bernie could have really played on that. That's emotion. That's a father's will and desire that his family should be safe and taking responsibility for my home and for my, you know, there's so much emotion. He could have played on that so easily. And the space thing, he could have gone into that. So Mr. Johnson, tell me about space. Tell me about the holidays that you take. You know, I know luggage is a big thing when you take family holidays. Do you guys like taking family holidays? And we could have talked about the road trips we were going to take in this car. There was so much for Bernie to work with there. Instead, he's telling me about the titanium in the windshield. Do you get it? You have to ask questions and listen. And that creates the impression in the client's mind that you care enough for them to listen to them and help them get what it is that they truly want. That's how you get people to trust you. Once in one of my seminars, an agent was getting really excited as I was speaking through these issues, and he interrupted me and said, I'm busy trying to find a house for a Scottish couple, and she wants a big kitchen. So what I'm going to do this Saturday, instead of marching them through the whole house that I'll be showing them, I'm just going to go straight into the kitchen. I'm going to hop up onto the kitchen counter and make small talk while she enjoys the sea view, because apparently there was a beautiful sea view from this kitchen. I said, that's good thinking. I remember his name was Paul. I said, that's good thinking, Paul, but can I ask you a question? Why does she want a big kitchen? And there was silence. And Paul kind of scratched his head, and hopefully the penny dropped. You see, he didn't know. And at that moment, one of the ladies in the audience shouted out, "I know why she wants a big kitchen." And as she said that, I interrupted her. I said, "Ma'am, I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but you do realize that you are about to make the mistake that I am talking about." And she kind of looked at me a bit confused. She said, "No, I'm not. Listen, every woman wants a big..." And I said, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I really am sorry to interrupt you twice in a row. But you are making the very mistake that I am trying to teach you about." Now, what mistake was she making? Yes, she was assuming to know why Paul's client wanted a big kitchen. Now, there are two big problems with assuming to know why people want what they want. Firstly, you might assume incorrectly. So I said to this lady, "Ma'am, the truth be told, you have no idea why this couple wants a big kitchen. They might really love tango dancing, and when they got married 40 years ago, they couldn't afford a home, and so they were renting a one-bedroomed apartment in Glasgow, which is freezing in the winter, and the only warm room in the house was the kitchen, and they might have had an absolutely minute kitchen, and one day they were huddled together in front of the stove, and the husband made a promise to his brand new bride in a broad Scottish accent, which I'm not going to get right, but one day, me bonnie lass, when we can afford it, we're not going to live in a wee house. I'm going to buy a house with an absolutely enormous kitchen, me bonnie lass, and we're going to dance the tango in it." You know, most purchasing decisions are made on emotion. And as a real estate agent, I'm sure you know this is especially true of people buying or selling a home. It's all about emotion and memory. And the logic and the facts, they do play into it, of course, but they come second. And I'm not saying that people don't care about the numbers and the finances. What I'm telling you is that if you never seek to understand the emotion behind a client's transaction, you will never be a top performing agent. You will get clients, you'll do transactions, but you'll never win people's hearts. You'll never build long-term relationships. And what this means is that you will never work systematically by referral. Now, that is the second reason why you should never assume to know people's emotions and motives. They have to feel as if they had the chance to express those to you in such a way that you understand them. This is an absolutely key principle. Now, please read this carefully. It is not enough for you to know what your clients want, a big kitchen. It's not even enough for you to know why your clients want what they want, the tango dancing promise. Your clients must know that you knew what they wanted and why. Now, that's a bit of a mouthful, and I'm going to ask you to read it again slowly. Everybody wants to feel understood, right? And the only way to find out what a client wants and why they want it is to ask questions. And when they tell you, you ask them why. And why is that important to you? You must ask questions like, "Mrs. Edwards, what is the most important thing to you about buying a new home?" And then, for goodness sake, close your mouth and listen. And then when she's done, mirror back to her emotions. So, Mrs. Edwards, if I'm understanding you correctly, you are wanting a home with a garden where there is a lot of sunlight because your 6-year-old daughter loves playing outside, and you want her to be able to have a warm and peaceful space where she can do just that. Am I right? You know, most bad salespeople would never even have heard Mrs. Edwards talk about her daughter. They'd be too busy showing her the carport and the brass knobs in the bathroom and the extra large sink in the scullery. Then, here is an absolutely golden tip for you. When concluding a transaction, use a handwritten personal note together with a relevant gift as a way to demonstrate to the client that you understood their emotions. Okay, so for Mrs. Edwards, that may simply be 2 floral hats on the kitchen counter, one for her and one for her daughter, together with a note saying, "Congrats on your new home, Mrs. Edwards. You and Annie are going to spend so much quality time together in that beautiful garden that I thought these hats would come in handy." See, now she knows that you knew. She knows that you understood, and she will refer you forever. Especially if you have a keep in touch referral system, what I'm calling your Trusted Advisor program, and that's what we're teaching through this Referral Mastery course. Let's take another example. For Paul, the guy with the Scottish couple, for his Scottish clients, it might have meant leaving a CD player or some kind of iPod or something in the kitchen with a little portable speaker, playing some tango music gently in the background with a little note next to it saying, "Congrats on the new home, Mr. and Mrs. McDermott. May this kitchen be filled with music and dancing and with many fond memories of those days in Glasgow." Well, in that case, Paul wouldn't just sell a home, would he? He would fulfill a lifelong dream, and what is more, he would create an advocate. All right, let's move on to our second service excellence technique, and that is to be flexible. Show your clients that you're willing to try. Bad salespeople are inflexible to their clients' needs. Good salespeople, on the other hand, are willing to listen and will try to meet the client's needs within certain uncontrollable boundaries. Now, all of us, to one extent or another, are tempted to impatience. We're tempted to get flustered and frustrated when our clients are asking us for things that we didn't expect them to ask for and that we think is just actually a little bit unreasonable. Especially when you're busy and you're under pressure, we can get flustered, we can get impatient. If a client can see that you're getting impatient, I'm telling you, for the rest of that transaction, there will be a black spot between the two of you, and they will, after the transaction, just drift away. It's very difficult to recover when you have offended someone through demonstrating impatience to them. Good salespeople manage to keep their cool, and no matter what the client is asking them, even if it's completely unreasonable, they use these magic words. And these are some magic words that I would suggest you learn off by heart and you use them repeatedly. When somebody asks something that's difficult or inconvenient or actually just a little bit unreasonable, this is what you say. "Let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can do." Stephen, do you think, our daughter has really fallen in love with this family's dog. Do you think that, we could throw the dog in with the transaction? Some of you have actually done that. You've sold a dog with a home. And there's no way that's going to happen. You don't say, "No, they're never going to do that." Just say, "Well, let me see what I can do." And then you disappear. Because if you do that, and then you come back a day later, and you say, "Guys," they've probably forgotten that they made the request anyway. You come back and you say, "Guys, I did actually raise the subject tentatively with the sellers, and unfortunately, they were not even willing to entertain it. But I did try. Sorry about that." You know what the buyer is thinking? In the back of their minds, they're like, "There's no way they're going to sell us this dog." But what you have now demonstrated to them is that you're willing to work with them. You're willing to listen and at least try. You're flexible. "Let me see what I can do." Really magic words. Clients don't expect you to give them everything they want, but they do expect you to care enough to try. All right, so that's to be flexible. Service technique number 3, wow your clients with little touches of service throughout the transaction. Making an impression that will last 5 years or more is not difficult. Now, I actually want to stop there and ask you, can you remember, if you've been in your home more than, say, 3, 4, 5 years, can you remember anything that the real estate agent that sold you your home did during the course of the transaction? Is there any memory that you have of your agent? What do you remember about them? Now, I've asked that question of thousands of agents, and I've often had them say, oh, she bought us flowers. The day we walked in, there was a bottle of champagne and some flowers on the kitchen counter, and I've always remembered that. I thought that was sweet. You know, how much does that cost? So this is the point I'm making here. It's not that difficult to make an impression that lasts 5 years in people's memories or more. But here's what creates the memory. People remember anything that is unexpected and unnecessary. And that's what makes it memorable. It was unexpected. Oh, wow. It was a bit of a surprise. Wow, what's this thing that she's left or he's left for me? And it's unnecessary. You want them saying, oh, wow, and then they didn't have to do that. It was unnecessary. They didn't have to do it, but they did it. That's what creates memories, and you can do that on every transaction. So, I want to suggest that you create a system in your business to do this. Draft a transaction timeline, and if you're a member of a team and you've got people that work with you, so much the better. Do this together with a small group. It's a wonderful thing to do together. Draft a transaction timeline and use it to find 3 moments at which you can systematically, consistently do something for the client which is both unexpected and unnecessary. So the timeline will start when the lead is generated, and from there there's going to be a phone call that's made, then there's going to be the listing presentation. We actually go and see the clients, and then they sign with you to be their agent. Once they sign, then maybe the first marketing materials are produced, and then the first open house is held, and then the first showing, and then the first offer is, and then there's negotiations, and eventually it's put under contract. So create a timeline of the average transaction. There's lots of little moments in a transaction. Now, in your group, brainstorm every time there's a little moment on your timeline. Is there something we could do at that moment, the first listing presentation, or when the contract is signed? Or is there something we can do there that's special, that's unexpected, and unnecessary? So maybe when the loan is approved, a little bag of chocolate gold coins is you just deliver to them with a little handwritten note saying, hey, we're one step closer, the loan just got approved. A little bag of chocolate coins. I mean, who's doing that? That is completely inexpensive, and it takes hardly any time to do it, but they will remember that for 10 years. So this is the exercise. Craft the timeline and come up with a whole bunch of ideas, and then all you do is you pick the top 2 or 3. You're not going to do them all. Say, okay, we like the golden coin idea, and we like the handwritten note with the gift at the end idea. Those are 2, and that's one that I suggest you would do every time. Those are the 2 we're going to do, and we're going to do it with every transaction. It's a system in our business. So what we're going to go and do now is buy 50 little bags of gold chocolate coins, and we're going to buy a stack of handwritten notes. That's just part of our system, and you can even write that into your operations manual if you've got assistants working with you. Then let's just finish with this point. Once you've made your wow impression, the worst thing that you can then do is not keep in touch after the transaction. The reason I wanted to make that point is just to orientate you to where or how this session on service excellence is an integral part of the bigger picture of what I'm teaching you in the Referral Mastery course, which is, of course, how to sort down a database to 100 to 300 advocates and then keep in touch with those people on a regular basis using multiple touch types and certain dialogues, so that we're going to build ongoing relationships with people that get deeper and deeper and deeper. It's the keeping in touch with people long term that gets the referrals. So yes, we do all these wonderful service excellence techniques. We create advocates because all these little touches that nobody else is doing. But then you've got to make the most of that, which you've created for yourself, by then keeping in touch with that person long term. And that also requires a system. So please just have that kind of orientation in your mind. Service technique number 4. Give your client your undivided attention. So the NAR did a poll a number of years ago interviewing buyers and sellers of property, and they asked them, when dealing with a real estate agent, what is it that you really want from them? And they got 3 predominant answers. These were the top 3 answers from their poll. Number 1, people want their agents' undivided attention. I mean, the fact that that's number one on the list of your clients should tell you something about how most people feel real estate agents treat them. Like constantly distracted and not like, look at me please, listen to me please. That's how people are feeling with real estate agents. Number two is someone who understands their needs. That comes back to our previous point about asking questions and listening and probing. Why is that important to you? That's what clients are saying they want from their agent. And then number three is a salesperson they feel they can trust. Now, that's why we work by referral. That's why the whole concept of working by referral plays into, or it swims with the stream of human nature. We're working with human nature when we work by referral, because working by referral is all about brokering trust. It's about being introduced to clients who want to deal with us because their friend has told them nice things about us. They trust us already when we meet them. The biggest enemy of giving your clients your undivided attention is what are the two words I'm going to put in there next? You know what I'm going to say. Your cell phone. That is the biggest enemy to giving your clients your undivided attention. I hope you, at the very least, put your phone on silent when you are with clients. The worst thing you can do when a client phones you and you're with another client is to say, apologize to the client. You look at the phone, say, "Oh, I'm sorry, because would you mind if I'll be with you in just I'm sorry, it's important, and I'll be with you in 2 seconds. I promise you, I will." You start making all these like mealy mouth excuses. Mealy mouth, that's a nice South African term. So mealy is corn, and you know, if you've eaten too much corn, you have lots of like corn kernels in your mouth, and now and corn is spitting all over the place. It's a South African expression for someone who's like, you know, failing to make an excuse which he ought to have. So if that's the worst thing you can do when you are with a client and you kind of take a phone call, because you know what you're saying to the client then is, this phone call is more important than you. That's what you've just told them. There's an equal danger with now our phones vibrate when they're on silent. And you can often hear a phone vibrating in someone's pocket. So this is why I say, at the very least, put it on silent. At best, just put it on flight mode while you're with the client. Because then you're not going to have that awkward moment where you're trying to listen and they're talking and then zzz, zzz, like your whole body shudders as it, and then your eyes sort of glaze over as you are forcing yourself to keep listening to the person. And they know exactly what's happening. So please, treat your phone like an enemy when you are with clients. They want your undivided attention. Then number 5, keep the experience pleasant at all times. Keep the experience pleasant at all times. Always remember this: no matter how good you are at your work, the process must be pleasant for the client. I said earlier, if somebody recognizes in you just a little sharpness of tongue or a little impatience, it's done. It's done. The moment it's unpleasant once, it's soured the relationship. You've got to be in control of your emotions. And that's difficult. It's difficult for me in my business. I know this. This is an area of struggle for me to not get flustered and impatient when I'm dealing with lots of people and people are coming up and I'm getting distracted by things that I think are not important, and I struggle with this. So I know that this is not easy, but as salespeople, we have to be in control of our emotions so that our clients feel that we are a nice person to be around, that we are pleasant. Referrals depend on our transitioning people from know to like to trust. They have to like you. Like is part of the process here. It's not just trust you. They have to like you, if they enjoy being around you. Okay, so rate yourself out of 10 very quickly. 1 means you're terrible, you're bad, you need to improve. 10 means you're perfect, you never get this wrong. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 quickly. I never lose my temper in front of a client. I smile a lot without being weird. You don't want to be like Jack Nicklaus in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but you do want to smile. People respond to a smile, don't they? You like it when I smile, even on the video. Thirdly, on the whole, I am patient with all. Yes, we all have our moments, but on the whole, I'm pretty patient. I would give myself at best a 5 there. This is something I'm needing to work on. The next one, I always treat my clients with respect. I think I am pretty good at that. I try to treat people with respect, even if it's calling people sir or ma'am, even when I don't need to. I just think it's respectful, and that's important. I never interrupt my clients when they're talking. Oh, wow. If you want to see me get impatient, just if you ever see me at a conference or somebody rushes up and they talk to me and they ask me a question and they want me to answer their question, and I'm halfway through my first sentence and they interrupt me, oh boy, I'm going to be challenged now with I am always polite. And let me tell you, your clients are as well. Never interrupt someone when they're talking, because it is like slapping them through the face. And then the last one is, there is always humor in our relationships. Not inappropriate humor. There is humor that can be inappropriate or too early in a relationship. I understand that. I do make that error as well sometimes myself. But allow yourself to be human and your sense of humor to come out. It's part of building relationships. All right, number 6, the last one. Maintain constant communication throughout the transaction. There is only one way to make sure your client feels at ease throughout your transaction together: constant communication. And I would suggest you should diarize a weekly phone call to your current clients. I tell all of my agents to do this once a week. Every current client gets a phone call, even if there's no news. You're just touching base. Hey, Mrs. Jones, just touching base. There's no news from last week. Or, hey, we had a couple of showings last week, no offers yet. We're going to be showing the property again next weekend. Just phone them, even for a 30-second catch-up. The worst thing you can do is just go radio silence. And you know, agents, I know agents in South Africa like this, and I believe agents in the States also struggle with this, is that once the contract has been signed, real estate agents are infamous for just disappearing into thin air while we're waiting for the thing to finalize and the clients to get paid. Well, that's the most important time to keep in touch with clients. They don't know what's happening. They're wondering, where's the money? What's happening with the transfer? Where the legal documentation? I don't understand how this whole legal, I've never heard of escrow before. What is escrow? I don't know what escrow, you know, we take it for granted that people understand what's going on. No, keep in touch every week, even until the thing is finalized and the clients have moved into the home. And then after that, you're going to keep in touch again using our system. So constant communication, diarize a weekly phone call to all current clients. All right, that's our session for today. I hope that's helpful. Picked up some things you can use in your business. Again, the steps towards mastery are the same as they were from our last session, because I want to give you another 2 weeks to prime your database. You're going to phone through all 100 advocates, 200, 300, how many you've got, and you're going to prime each one using the database primer dialogue. And then you're going to write a handwritten note to each one who successfully primed, just thanking them for their pledge of support. So please do try your best to finish your priming of the database by our next session, and we'll pick it up then with our session on adding responsive people to your database. We're going to be talking about how you get people to critical mass quickly, which is when you are top of mind and they can't help seeing opportunities for you. So God bless you, and we'll see you in the next session.